we're on to some of our last 3 weeks of this season, and to begin this off, we revisit Dark Castle Entertainment and do the very one that started off their careers as a studio.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, say that thou art High King of heaven, thou art. Hey, wanna play hide and clap?
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new episode of Halloween Horror Movie Review 6. And for this episode, we are going to be reviewing the film that kickstarted the studio, Dark Castle Entertainment, who would do a few William Castle remakes. And this was not just their first film. It was the first of those remakes, and it came out in the epic year of movies of 1999. One of the best years for film. This movie and review is going to be for none other than 1999's House on Haunted Hill, which is directed by William Malone, who after this would go on to do, guess what people? Fear.com. Yeah. He would do that after this. That's exactly enough we need to know. But, how is the plot of House on Haunted Hill? So, this eccentric millionaire that's played by Jeffrey Rush offers a group of opposites $1 million each to spend the night in a so-called haunted house with a murderous past. They figure it is a quick way to get quick money and leave. All of them are sure it is some made-up story to mess with their heads a little and test their courage. But once they stay in the house, they start to think about the mistake they made and coming when those mysterious things start to happen. So, that's my reaction. Kind of like with 13 Ghosts. I've not really seen the original film of this. I've not really seen any of the original William Castle versions, but I know that some of the Dark Castle Entertainment films are remakes of them. 13 Ghosts is a remake of one. House of Wax, which I will be doing also as well, is also a remake of one, and this movie is a remake of one. But I have heard of the film. It is sadly directed by the guy that did Fear.com. But thankfully, this movie is not a piece of shit like Fear.com is. It was what kickstarted Dark Castle Entertainment, who did some pretty decent films. They did 13 Ghosts, they did House of Wax, there's some other stuff. They did Orphan. That's not a William Castle remake, but that was actually a pretty good film. I actually like the first Orphan film. Orphan First Kill I do not like. But I love the first one. What else have they done? Oh yeah. They have also done some pieces of shit. They did the Event Horizon ripoff called Ghost Ship, or Ghost Shit as I call it. They did The Apparition in 2012. And that sucked ass. They're a split company. They've done some pretty decently enjoyable stuff, and they've done some horrible stuff. They did many horror films with Warner Bros. Until 2012. But, having just watched this film, this was a pretty good time waster. It's not a masterpiece horror film, but it's a pretty good, decent time waster for what it is. So how was House on Haunted Hill made? So screenwriter Dick Beebe adapted the film script from Rob White's 1959 original film. The updated elements of the story introduced a significant supernatural component that was absent from the original film, and filming took place in Los Angeles in early 1999. And makeup artist Gregory Nicotero and Dick Smith provided the film's special effects. So, after House on Haunted Hill was officially shot and advertised, House on Haunted Hill was released on Halloween weekend in 1999. And it was started a tradition of remakes of Willie Castle's theater gimmicks, where Warner Bros. Would supply scratch cards to cinemas showing the film and offer ticket buyers a chance to win a money prize, like the movie's characters. And when it came to the reviews and the box office, it got negative reviews from critics because they did not like the special effects and gore, but they did praise the performances and horror elements. And it was actually a pretty decent commercial success. It made $65 million worldwide. It opened at #1 at the US box office. Then in 2007, a direct-to-video sequel called Return to House on Haunted Hill would be released. So anyway, guys, here are the good qualities in the story of House on Haunted Hill. So the good stuff, like, the whole's not really equal to most. Like, now, when it comes to the best performances, I'd say easily Jeffrey Rush is easily the best character of the film. Stephen Price is a very interesting character, because the script really takes its good time to set him up. They also get Price's wife Evelyn gets also similar treatment as the character does, also is an interesting character. But there's times when the screenwriters do get kind of lazy with kind of most of the other stuff of the film. The strangers in the house, though, they're not wasted. They do get a minimal amount of character setup, like who they are, what they do, but it doesn't really get touched up on much of the time. Again, after you know that stuff, like, you would hope that information like this would be displayed for a good purpose, like the background of these strangers, like the old cat and mouse game with Mr. and Mrs. Price, Mr. Price's fascination with fear. That's set up intensely in the movie's opening minutes, but it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, it's completely independent from the agenda of the house, when it really should try to tie together for a movie like this. Like, there are stuff that work here. The ghosts who haunt the house, the humans who are trapped in it, the darkness that lives beneath it. And they're all separate entities, but, like, they have to find, but for, like, what purpose, though? Now, despite some faults in the script is intelligent. Like, the characters who talk and sometimes do act like real people, and they don't have any stupid in-jokes or character to provide comic relief. Like, they actually deal with this whole thing seriously, and it actually does try to add to the tension well. The setting is scary, and of course, like, the house, like, this is a house that's actually an abandoned asylum that's really disguised as a house. The house really looks very evil. Like, you got all the darkness, you got all the cobwebs, it looks very haunted. Like, and also, like, when it comes to the acting, like, this is a role where you can see Jeffrey Rush is actually having a great time in this role. Like, every time his character's on screen, I enjoy the scenes where he's on screen. The rest of the cast is bad, but you kind of feel like characters that just about anybody really could have played, and we're really just reacting to special effects. And of course, like, the psychiatric institute set is perfect. It's got this terrifying atmosphere. It really feels like this actual haunted house. And it's a perfect atmosphere to be placed in a movie like this. And these strange and dangerous occurrences, like, it seriously seems like they're part of Price's trickery or something else. Like, it really strengthens the drama more and increases the line of raising tension. And the filmmakers really take advantage of the opportunities to use the house's many dark hallways and creepy chambers, and you get some disturbing sequences in the chambers. These would make an insane person go insane, or a sane person insane, and produce a horrifying perspective of the character's mind. Like, you can tell the filmmakers definitely go really over the edge here with these sequences. So how do we start off? So we actually do start off with a very creative opening title sequence. Yeah, this opening title sequence that plays this, like, dark, sinister piano music that really feels like music that would belong in a 1960s film. Like, this film, like, the opening title sequence feels very 50s and 60s-like, and I really like that. You get the little practical stop-motion effects in the opening titles. So I really liked what they did there with that little bit. I really loved how the opening titles went. And then we get to the opening scene, where it's 1931, where eventually these patients at this asylum called the Vanishue Psychiatric Institute for the Criminally Insane, they go crazy against the staff, and Dr. Richard B. Vannicutt is the head of the staff. Like, well, there's the sadistic head of the staff, and then a fire erupts, and the inmates are also killed, and also kill all 5 of the staff as well. That sets up the opening of the film. And then we get to the year 1999. where we meet Jeffrey Rush's character, Stephen Price, who has his marriage with Evelyn Stockard Price. We see like Stephen Price's life. He's this amusement park mogul known for his little pranks on the rides. And then, of course, at one point, he's showing this news team his new roller coaster that he just built. That how you get there, it has this elevator that goes up and then drops down all the way. And then, of course, it stops, like, actually safely well. At first, like, it seems like he has nothing to do with that, but it turns out that's part of the way to get there. And then you get to and then that's how you get to the coaster. And the coaster acts like a normal coaster. At first, it seems like the track's going to break. And, it's probably going to do this story where this guy's reputation gets ruined, the ride malfunctions, and then his reputation gets ruined, and this whole haunted house thing is going to be his only way to repair his reputation. At first, it seems like it's going to go like that plot, like that kind of plot, but it turns out the track's coming off. When the coaster falls off, it's actually not actual people on that one. The one that falls off is actually a bunch of just props and dummies to kind of rile up the guest's fear. And then once the one with actual people starts going near that track, the track then closes again, and the rest of the ride proceeds as normal. So it's actually like, thankfully that's just part of it, and it's just like used as a way to kind of get the guests more terrified on the ride. And thankfully, like that one was just had a bunch of props and dolls on that coaster. Like you can see it like setting up, like you can actually see that one getting set up for the next ride. So at the very least, like at first he seems like the kind of guy that's more obsessed with money, but at the very least, like he actually does know how to entertain his riders and stuff, and actually puts effort in his rides. And this coaster actually looks very well built. It actually looks like this whole roller coaster looks much better than a lot of the roller coasters we get today that look cheap. Like this looks like an actual roller coaster. And it's actually a bunch of creative pranks right there. An elevator that drops to get you there. And then of course you get the actual roller coaster. At first it seems like it breaks, but once you're near the track, like that's just to kind of trick you, and it actually closes and the rest of the ride proceeds as normal. There. So it was a nice little subversion of expectations right there. So Evelyn then insists Stephen that he staged her birthday party at the abandoned hospital he saw at the beginning, and then he gets some 5 guests that you don't really see like the first introductions to them much. Like they just kind of immediately get introduced as soon as they're on. Where your 5 guests are this baseball player named Eddie Baker, his television personality Melissa Mayer, or his physician Donna Blackburn, or Sarah Wolf, his production assistant that's impersonator for her boss Jennifer, and Pritchard, the Billings owner. Like the guests are not the only ones Price invited, and neither the Prices really know who they are, but Prices goes along, continues the party's advertised theme. He offers $1 million to each guest who remains in the house until morning. Those who have to flee or perish forfeit their $1 million to the others. Right there. So that's how our film starts off. That's where our story goes. Sorry, take a little long, guys. And so the best part of this film, like, is definitely the creepy individual scenes. Like, whenever the scene that involves Mr. Price in a chamber, seeing all these disturbing, creepy things, like, that's definitely a pretty freaky moment right there. Or whenever Melissa's ghost disappears is very creepy, and there are plenty of other pretty creepy, disturbing imagery moments. And the House on Haunted Hill is definitely not afraid to graphically pick off its characters one by one in grisly manner to provoke horrifying fright to the audience. It's perfectly fun to predict who's going to be next and how they're going to be murdered. And whenever it comes to certain questions like how, to be fair, like as much as I kind of wish we saw a little more introduction to these characters in the film, the House on Haunted Hill isn't going to be the kind of movie to answer those kind of questions. It's not really educated to really get much of an explanation of the characters. Like Stephen Price, you do at least know who he is. Like he's this like amusement park owner who puts in a lot of effort in his rides at the very least. And he's actually well developed in some of the film's first scenes. Like, but the rest of the characters, either they just say their name, what they do for a living, like it's just not that well developed. And the movie's many plot and character twists aren't really that effective, like, because we don't really know much of the characters, apart from Jeffrey Rush and Vam Jennison's characters. The movie tries to really tell that something's like, someone's not who they are to be, but and how they're supposed to believe it. It's like, how do you know much of these guys from the beginning? And another thing, like, now I'm not like negatively ranting on these things, guys. I think this is enjoyable. But it's like, but there's a reason why it's not a masterpiece in horror. The direction does get kind of over the wall at times, like, but William Malone, though, does a good job focusing on each of the scary elements. The thing is, it just doesn't focus much on the characters. Whenever the characters do walk slowly down a dark, deserted hallway, they get off focus of where they really are and the circumstances they're really in. And another thing with the production, like, there's not much boundaries here. Kind of like just anything and everything can happen. Like, I mean, now once again, like I said, the best cast member of the film is Jeffrey Rush, who I actually do enjoy as an actor. Like, I enjoy him in the parts of the Caribbean films with Barbosa. And I also enjoy his voice acting in Finding Nemo, and I actually do enjoy him in this film. I think he terrifically plays this perfectly stuck-up fraud. I mean, he's not too much of an asshole. At first, it seems like he is, but when it comes to, like, the coaster scene in the beginning, but he's thankfully not that. He's not too much of a POS, in a way, because at, like, the very least, actually does kind of somewhat do care about his rider's safety. In a way, and at least does put effort in that coaster. He really accomplishes much with his character because of the fresh development he gets. Like, he's the one that gets the most fresh development of all of them. Like that, and that's kind of the thing. A part of me kind of wishes that the movie would be more about him. And kind of wish he was the one, I kind of wish he was one of the people whose soul survived the film. But eventually, though, the building security system is tripped just as the whole thing begins, and everyone is locked inside. And at first they think Price did it, but Price had nothing to do with this, actually. So Price is not the villain. Right there. So he blames that on Evelyn, and Jennifer, Eddie, and Pitchett decide to search Labyrinth based on her control panel. Jennifer gets separated from the gang from Eddie, and almost gets pulled into a tank of blood by this clone that impersonates him. But it turns out, yeah, it's a hallucination, and actual Eddie arrives to save her. But then Melissa disappears, and she's murdered. And from what we see on her video camera, she's been murdered by one of the ghosts. And a trail of blood is left. And Price then goes to find his assistant, Schuchler, who's overseen stunts. But he's been mute because his face has been ripped open. There's some good practical effects on the death scene right there, where you see like the guy's face torn off. And it looks very well done. The set design of the body of the person looks very well done. And then, of course, on a surveillance monitor, he sees his apparition, Dr. Vanuatu, armed with a bloody saw. And Evelyn then seemingly does die in front of the others when she's trapped on his shock therapy table. Then Price pulls a gun on the guests and at first, like, he thinks his wife is dead and he wants to know which one of them killed his wife. But then they decide that they're going to turn on him and they lock him inside this chamber, which is this, like, zootrope device that Vanuatu used to treat his patients. And Blackburn volunteers to guard Price, and then everybody leaves, and he actually decides, like, he can't hear what Price is saying. He then turns the chamber on, and Price is left to be tortured by all the moving images. At first, like, it's clear Price is telling him to turn it off, but he thinks, like, what, you want it like this? And he turns up like that. It turns up higher and higher. And meanwhile, when it goes back to Sarah and Eddie, they find this portrait of the hospital staff, and it turns out that the people that were invited by the Prices were actually, well, the exception of Blackburn, the Prices and themselves are actually part of the 5 survivors of the 1931 fire. And Sarah surmises the spirits hacked Price's computer and altered the guest list. Right there. So once the initial premise is set up, like, some time is spent, like, following these people when they wonder about the haunted house. And it's wonderfully realized in a very creepy setting. It's definitely very haunted house-like. Right there. And it got the grimy corridors with the flickering lights and the blood splash operating rooms, the scientific equipment, and it's packed with so much twisted stuff. Like, you can really admire the attention to the detail here. Now, some of the characters aren't really well developed. Like, even the not so well developed characters are actually pretty likable. Like, they're not like assholes. Like, they're not douchebag sex animals. And when it comes to Fam Jansen and Jeffrey Rush's screen time together, another thing I forgot to mention, like, the two have some pretty decent chemistry with one another. And like Fam Jansen, who has played Rogue in some of the X-Men films, or Jean Grey. Like, she has some good one-liners as well. And there's also Chris Kattan, who plays this one character, is also pretty amazing in the role. Now, once again, guys, I've not seen the original work, but for those who have seen the original work, this actually is one of the few better remakes out there. Like, if you have seen the original film, tell me what you guys think about it. And it provides this decent 93 minutes of viewing, delivering some good performances from the cast, even from some of the not so well developed ones, and an actually pretty good haunted house like story. And it really entertains for this perfect edge of your seat atmosphere. And the people in this film are aware they're making horror cheese, and they don't really aspire to make anything else. And the performances are appropriate and campy as they all get out. So Blackburn and Eveline, it turns out they're lovers who faked Eveline's death. Like, they want to frame Price and hoping one of the guests will kill in self-defense. Meanwhile, Eveline, though, fears the guests are not motivated to turn on Price and kills Blackburn instead, and then releases Price from the saturation chamber, who had managed to survive by wearing these goggles. So Sarah, Eddie, and Pritchett discover Eveline's body is now missing, and so they go back to the chamber, and Blackburn's decapitated corpse is right there. Then Sarah finds Price, he's all covered in blood, and shoots him. Then Eddie and Pritchett arrive, and they bring Sarah upstairs. Eveline approaches Price to gloat about that. But it turns out, Price did not die from the gunshot. Because it turns out, Price is actually wearing this bulletproof vest and was actually pretending to be dead, and so gains the upper hand on Eveline. And they scuffle, and then Eveline gets thrown through this decaying floor, and this evil entity gets unleashed, and it composes the spirits of the house, including some of the previous people that were killed. So the shape-shifting entity consumes Eveline, and then she's killed, and her spirit is added to its mass. Then Stephen is left and discovers Melissa's dismembered body, and the entity keeps going after Price up the staircase before Pritchett is engulfed. Then, of course, this makes Price have a realization that the attic might house the mechanisms to operate the lockdown system, and flees there. Oh, yeah. When he was, trying to bang for the door to open, that was when Pritchett went back, and at first it seemed like Price is going to be consumed by the entity, but instead it consumes Pritchett instead. And a kind of random turn of events, and he pretty much then has Sarah and Eddie follow him to this lockdown system. And Price opens this iron window guard in the attic, and actually in this moment right here, he actually sacrifices himself so that the others can flee when the window opens. And so he does pull a heroic sacrifice there, and Sarah does escape, but Eddie gets trapped inside. And so the film cleverly does keep the supernatural in the background, and the characters do back by one another, and it's fun, but it's also suspenseful. One of the other problems I do have with the film is that there are some times when the special effects kind of come off as a little poor. Sometimes they look pretty good, the house looks good, and some of the blood does look good. The blood pit, which one of the characters Sarah almost falls into, actually looks very well designed. The coaster set looks well designed in the opening scene. The main titles are the best, most well designed scene of the film. I really love the main titles, and I also like the opening song too. No one wants to be used by you. It's a song called again. Oh yeah, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. I love the metal cover of that is playing to that in some of the opening scenes, and plays in the credits. Sweet dreams are made of these. Whoever mind to disagree. I really love the use of that song in this film. And you really admire Silver and Robert Zemeckis. Yeah, Robert Zemeckis was the producer of this film, and he was the producer of several other Dark Castle Entertainment horror films. They get some profile actors to really ham it up to the name of entertainment here. It's not, and at first it seems like you'd be watching a traditional horror film, but it's not a really traditional horror film. And there's times that it doesn't really feel that scary, but it's definitely very wonderfully over the top. And it does have some creepy imagery, but it's not 100% scary. And you have a beautiful set. The asylum looks perfect. It looks very well attention to detail here. It really does look like an actual haunted house attraction. That would make a great attraction at carnivals during Halloween season. In fact, you know what? I wish we had a haunted house like this. Can we get a haunted house like this? I would like that. I would like carnivals to actually make a haunted house like this, but sadly, the movie is not that well received, so I don't think it would really happen. So now we get on with the finale. The entity is trying to menace Eddie, but in kind of an anticlimactic way, he just tells the entity that he's adopted, and like Sarah, is not really descendant of the original staff, and so Pritchett's ghost then just decides to open the window and just allow Eddie to leave, and then the spirit just disappears. So Eddie and Sarah sit on the ledge, and there's this envelope that contains all 5 checks that were made to cash and were signed by Price. And the two won all the money because while everybody else died, they actually get all the others' checks, including their own. They escape. They have escaped and they won the money, but there's a problem. Because like it's over an ocean. Yeah, it's right over an ocean. And it's a very high building. They're pretty much stuck on the roof of the house. And they don't know how to get down. So, that's a pretty funny way to end the film. Like, how are we going to get down? So, they're stuck on the roof. They basically don't have a way down. They won the money, but they're basically stuck there. Like, what else are they going to do? They could jump in the water, but that's going to wreck the checks. The checks will be wet, and they won't be cashed in at all. So they're on the roof, and then sweet dreams are made of this place in the credits, and you do get this black and white post-credits scene where the spirits of the 1931 patients torture the Prices, and they're eternally damned for life in the afterlife. But that's how House on Haunted Hill ends. You have a nice little black and white post-credit scene that was likely supposed to be a homage to the original film, because the original film was black and white. And the 2 survivors got the money, but they're stuck. They can't get down. RIP. So now do I have any bad qualities with the film? Yeah, I do. There are some times when the movie does develop some tendency to some cheap jump scares. It diminishes kind of the strong build-up, and like for a bit, like there's one sequence that has this rooftop window fixture that just breaks and nearly kills one of the characters. Or Sarah finds herself up to her arms in this size vat, which now the blood looks well designed, but the blood scene did feel a little cheap, and there's times when the effects like don't really look that well, especially for 1999 standards. Like the clouds look way too CGI'd. Like I wish we had more effects like we did in the opening title sequence. I wish the effects were done like that. There's times the film does get a little sluggish with the scares, and the last 20 minutes do kind of rely on the whole basis haunted house story, and the plot doesn't really get well rounded in the end. And I kind of wish we had a bit more of a better twist, and not one that relied too much on the FX department, where the ending does. The rest of the movie doesn't really do that all that well. But other than those, I think The House on Haunted Hill is enjoyable, but it is a flawed way to start off Dark Castle Entertainment, where they were a company that would make some decently but flawed films. So in the end, I would probably stream House on Haunted Hill if you're familiar with the original, because while it is enjoyable, it is a very flawed remake for sure. Anyways, that's it for my view of House on Haunted Hill. If you want to rank House on Haunted Hill, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you are very familiar with the original film and want to see what kicked off Dark Castle's remake trend and their time as a studio in general, then I would just stream House on Haunted Hill due to it being kind of a flawed film. And ranking House on Haunted Hill, I'm going to give House on Haunted Hill a 7 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. That officially wraps up my review for House on Haunted Hill, and that wraps up that episode. So, what is going to be the next episode? Our next episode is a film I have been requested for years to do. And we're finally doing this one. And which one, obviously, yeah. Oh, man. Get the popcorn ready, people. Get the popcorn, get the sodas, get your chairs ready. Jaws the Revenge is the next fucking episode. Get ready for that. Get all the popcorn ready. You're gonna need it. Be ready. Alright, but until then, guys, that'll be it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. Tell me down in the comments down below what you guys think about House on Haunted Hill 1999, whether you love this movie a little more than I do, whether you have the same opinions as me, or whether you just don't like this movie. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.